Hi, I'm Jay. With this video, we're going over the course of a couple weeks as I cut out the pieces needed for the bow and stern walls and the floor for that front hatch on the Native Slayer Max, with the idea of removing the front tub and increasing the usable space in the front hatch. Stay tuned. So this is an idea I had ever since purchasing the Slayer Max 12.5. I love this kayak. It was probably one of the best purchases I've made in quite some time. But ever since my first trip out with it, I always thought that that front hatch with just the bucket for your gear was kind of small. And I always had thought that it would be much better if you could use all that empty space that was below the bucket. I understand what they did, you know, adding the battery box. I'm going to be grateful for that once I start adding electronics to the boat. And that's our big project for next season. So what we're doing with this video is showing the process that I took from start to finish. I'm going to show the good, the bad, and the ugly of cutting out a pattern for bow and stern walls as well as a floor to increase that usable space in that front hatch. Spoiler, as I'm recording this, I have finished it. I'm feeling I'd give myself a strong B+, maybe an A-. That grade will be adjusted over the course of the rest of this season. If using it, I have no other issues and it actually performs the way I hope, then I'll boost it up to an A-. So I might have shown this before. I know I had pictures like on Instagram or something like that, but I did a little CAD design, cardboard aided design, and what I have here is a floor and a back wall. Just kind of mock these up just to see if they would fit. My plan will be to make a template out of 1/8 inch MDF. If this works, if this fits in place, well, then my next step would just be to get some starboard and do it properly. My idea is to maybe this is the bottom edge of the back wall. I'm sorry. This will be the bottom edge of the back wall. My idea is to maybe have a couple tabs like a puzzle piece in the bottom and maybe a space for those tabs on the floor, so when everything pops into place, it's nice and snug and secure. No nuts and bolts needed. The main idea is I really don't want to put any holes in the kayak, and I don't think for this I don't think it'll be necessary. So just to show you quickly, so here we have the bucket, and here we have the front hatch. Let's see, I know we don't have the best light here in the garage, but the front hatch. And the bucket, you know, you can hold a fair amount of stuff in this bucket, but if you take this bucket out, you have all this room inside. And so the idea is the floor piece will pop in place. And the way it sits on the floor of the hull here, there is space. So there's a good 3-4 inches of space underneath. In the event of water getting in there, which I don't think it would. I've never had an issue, but never say never. And then this back wall. This is a snug fit with the cardboard. But the idea would be to make it as snug as possible. And like I said, if there were a couple tabs that click into little holes in the floor, it would hold the floor tight against the base of the bottom of the hull. And this cardboard isn't perfect, but it just rests against the outside wall of the battery box, which, as you can see, I don't have a transducer or anything hooked up to the kayak. In any videoing I do, I usually run just an anchor battery to each of my GoPros when I'm on the water. But if I can build the floor and this back wall out of starboard, that will open up the usable spaces in this hatch. I think it would be, I think it'll work out really well. So that's my idea. So as you can see, I do have the tabs drawn in here very roughly. So what I'm going to do is just going to cut, leaving some space, and then I'll notch in the tabs and measure them out properly. Once both pieces are cut out and I see how it fits in the boat. So let's get set up. I'm just going to use the bandsaw. We'll get this done quick. So this morning, I happen to have the day off. Everyone's at work. So came out to work on the kayak a little bit more. I did cut the pattern for the hatch floor and back wall out of the 1/8 inch MDF. It looks great. I took a couple pictures to post. The way it snapped together, I tried to do it so it was as snug as possible, because once everything clicks in place, I want it to be sturdy. There is one spot at the very bow of the boat, and it could be from a couple different reasons. I am just using a cardboard pattern and eyeballing everything. So if that bottom floor isn't thin enough to lay completely level, when I snapped in the back wall, it appears that the nose pops up just slightly. That might not be an issue. You could load stuff on top of it, and the weight of all your belongings will just kind of keep it laying in place. I'm playing with the idea of just making a little pattern for a piece that goes right in the bow of the boat, like a front wall, but it won't be more than just a few inches wide. And in that case, maybe not necessary. You know, what do? I wedge a dowel or something up in there. I don't know. So we'll take a quick look at this. So far, it for this step, this next step, is going well enough where I could justify spending, you know, 50, 75 bucks on some starboard and seeing if I can make something useful or if I wasted 75 bucks. So, but this is what we have. And I have pictures. I did take pictures. I'll try to get some more pictures. I have a short video clip of me just cutting it, which is very not interesting. But this is the part that I'm talking about. Right now you can see that it's angled up because this section here is I cut the 3 tabs so it snaps in place and it's holding it snug against the bottom of the boat. But this part, you know, actually maybe I cut it a little too thin. You know, there's a little gap here on my pattern. But up here where it hits, maybe if I made this part slightly thinner where my hand is, it would lay down more flat. So, but it's practically perfect. Like, I don't know if I, you know, put a marble in here or something to see if it's level, but I'm thinking just to solve this problem, this issue, is just make a 2-inch wide front wall that just pops. There's a, where the hinge is for the lid, there's a shape like this where the screws screw in. I could wedge a piece of starboard in between this part of the top of the kayak and this shape where the hinge screw connects, and just have it come straight down. It'd be right about there. I would lose a couple inches of space, which you can't really pack much there, but you might have a handle or, you know, something that's a little bit longer, you know, tripod, camera, monopod or something like that you just want to throw in the hatch. You know, there is a, you know, good 6 inches of space there, but putting something there will most certainly does certainly increase the size. So I'm still not 100% sure that this is going to work. Like I said, though, the second part of this process, step 2, gives me enough encouragement to think that it's worth continuing. So I'm going to play around, cut that piece for the bow of the boat, just that little 2 or 3 inch wide piece, just to hold down the nose. And if that works, then we're going to buy some starboard. So, really pleased how this works out. As you can see, this has 3 cutouts here that snap into place, and it's just pressure against the back wall, which is the wall of this tub for your battery. And it doesn't extend all the way up to here. I will try to cut a piece that's a little bit taller, because ideally if it reached right into this corner here, that would be ideal. There is space here, mostly because it was just difficult for me to figure out the angles and everything, so I was eyeballing everything and just left it. But my idea is to keep this open, because that's where you would route cables and whatnot. So I might keep that just like it is. The other idea I had was, if I did close up the 2 ends, to put a 2 or 3 inch hole here and a 2 and 3 inch hole here, that would do two things. It would give you something to hold on to when you're snapping everything together. I kind of had to line up these spaces here, having the back wall angled forward, and then as I pushed the back wall straight, everything snapped into place, which is how I wanted it to be, like a pressure fit. I thought that would work well, and it did. I really think this is the way to go. I'm not an engineer. My profession for the last 40 years has been social work, so definitely not an engineer, but I do like to tinker. So I guess that's all we'll have for today. I'm going to get a few more pictures, and like I said, over the course of the next few days, we're going to do more video. I'm using a couple different cameras. I'm hoping the audio is good on all of them. I like these cameras. I've used them before. I'm comfortable with using the couple different GoPros that I have and kind of splicing everything together. But this really is a unscripted event. This might be edited out, I don't know. But I'm still practicing as a YouTuber. I have ideas of how things should be. Now, I did mention, my profession has been in social work. I did originally go to school for radio and television, video production. Back in the day when the mixing board, I have an A10 Mini, when that mixing board was the size of a room, and it took 3 people to manage it. One director standing behind 2 controllers, managing a couple cameras each. But I didn't want this garage thing to be super scripted. I would love to be able to set up the garage like a studio, have some cameras that are placed appropriately and permanently. So you got your 4 perfect views all the time, and then maybe one additional camera where I'm, my view, or my, here, let me take the camera and stick you in the hatch so you could see what I'm doing. Yeah, I think it'd be great to have something like that, but at the same time, I'm not one of the professional kind of guys. So it's always not sad, but it's almost like a band that you like, and they started in a garage and they had no money, and and then they get famous and then they're just not the same band anymore. Growing up, as a teenager in the 80s, for me, that was, U2. Boy came out and you thought that album was amazing, and this band is amazing, and their point of view and everything was it. And then after Joshua Tree, they shit themselves because they made more money than God. So was that really a fact, or was it just the fact that I finally graduated college and I'm a grown-up, so, and I just didn't get it. I grew out of it, not YouTube, you know what I mean? So, but it's the same. I have the same feeling when I'm watching some of the guys on YouTube that I've watched over the years, not just fishing or with kayaks. There's a couple auto mechanics kind of shows that I follow and watch and really, really enjoy. And a few of them, thank goodness, good for them, have gotten, they've reached the pro level of the YouTube thing, tens of thousands of followers. You've watched their programs go from, it's just me and my GoPro to, they must have at least a couple people managing cameras, or somebody managing a camera and somebody in the background that manages the travel and the cost and ordering crap. you know, because the guy fixing the car can't be spending 8 hours a day searching for parts online so he can do his video. He's got to do his videos. So I'm trying to, not that I wouldn't welcome that kind of fame and success. I also don't know if that's exactly how I want to present it. And I think the people that watch you from the beginning, they're watching you because of that because of that unscripted, realistic, raw, dirty, you know, video content that people enjoy watching. So I don't know. I'm babbling at this point. I don't know if I'll include this. It's just a thought. And I got nobody around to bug me, so I can. My wife will be out. She has to work today, so she'll come out soon and like make fun of me for being in the garage with the camera. So, but I guess the point I'm getting at is, you know, put down in the comments if you don't mind me breaking up the video like this over the course of a bunch of days. I'm not trying to make it look like it's all one video. You know, I'm not being... Okay, so we're back in the garage. I've been working a little bit more on that 1/8 inch MDF pattern. Have it all snapped in tight. I've been adding a little bit of material to enlarge the pieces. When I get the camera down into the hatch, you'll see that I still need to add a little bit to the front piece to extend the top part so it reaches the side walls, and do a little bit better at following the actual shape of the front of the kayak. I don't have much time every day. You know, I'll come into the garage and you know, maybe an hour and a half. That's about all I have each evening this week. But I really want to get this to the point where I can start cutting out the starboard. You'll see on both the front and the back panels there are some circles drawn on there. What I'm planning on doing is having a few access holes, and those holes will also serve the purpose of giving you something to hold on to as you're pressing it into place. It is a fairly tight fit. I'm trying to make it as snug as possible. I had to shorten the width of the larger panel that goes against the battery box just because it wasn't making the turn. So we'll get a couple pictures, and over the next few days I'll keep videotaping and showing the progress on this as we move along. I think this is the final of step 2, which was making the MDF version to see how snugly it will fit in the hatch of the Slayer Max. I think I have the overall size that we're going to have. That's finalized. This sample will also have a couple of the access holes if you're running wires and whatnot. Also gives you something to grab onto when you're snapping it in place. It's still a little rough on some of the edges. You'll see in the stern wall, I guess I'll be calling it, where following the contours of the boat, there were some gaps, so I cut a couple strips and then glued them into place just to be a little bit more accurate in terms of using this wooden sample as our pattern when we go to cut out starboard. So this is what we got. There's the stern with the access holes. Here's the two parts that I said that I cut. Here's another mistake. When I trace this out, I'll know that there's a gap in that little section right there. Here's the back wall. This hole here isn't needed, and was probably why originally I came up with the idea of putting the hole lower, because the wall of the tub gets in the way. That still might stay there, because if you have to run wires from the tub, putting them out a little bit higher towards the top of the boat, and then routing them left or right to the different sections of the kayak. There's also the outside walls, so I don't know if that'll change or not, but there it is. Crisis averting. So I should probably look up what this plastic is called, because I don't remember. High density something something something. HDPE sheets. Polyethylene. So I'm back in the garage. We're making progress on increasing that usable space in the front hatch of the Native Slayer Max 12.5. Just to show what I've done so far, is I went and I got myself a sheet of 1/8 inch HDPE plastic. There's better options. I did look into getting some starboard. Would have had to gone with a 1/4 inch. I wasn't crazy about going with a thicker material. Also considered. I also considered it's similar to starboard, or it might be starboard, but it's got that textured surface to it. The cross hatching, which probably would have been way smart, just so your gear isn't sloshing around in the front hatch. But I did take my 1/8 inch MDF pattern, traced everything out, did a little bit of work just trying to even out the size and shape of the tabs, just so they would be a little bit more accurate. The lines on the floor of this box did fit well in the front hatch, but I know there's, I'm sure if I traced right down the center of this and folded it in half, it probably isn't quite a mirror image for any of these, because I am doing this with the calibrated eyeball. This HDPE is a little slick, and I actually wrote on it with marker, and if I rub it hard enough, it'll rub off. So I have to be a little careful with this. I don't want to mess up my pattern too much. But the one thing I did test here on the corner is what I will do, at least for this floor piece, once it's cut out. I can just take some rough sandpaper, and I'm going to scuff up the surface here just a little bit, just to give any gear that I throw in there a little bit of texture to sit on, so when you're sloshing through the waves or moving the boat, you don't get things sliding back and forth so much. I guess I could put some sort of cargo net or something like that if I really was concerned with that. But as you saw in my bucket, what do I throw in there? I throw a couple bungee cords, I got tow rope, I got my shoes, a couple dry bags, I got parts in case the handle breaks. I got an extra handle, I got an extra propeller, that type of thing. So the things that are in there really can slosh around. It's not going to hurt anything. I don't like taking a lot of fishing gear. I think people overdo it. And I haven't really discussed it, but the cloth tackle bag that I have. I was moving it around yesterday. I threw a couple more bags of plastics in there, and I just realized it's like that bag's getting a little bit too heavy. Like it really, you don't need that much junk when you're fishing, and I know fishermen, that's why we invent tackle boxes and make them bigger, you know, because we like to carry everything we own with us. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to start cutting out this pattern. I'm going to show a little bit of that. You might have noticed, you know, I have this bandsaw sitting up against the back wall because I'm just in a 2-car garage. And I do have a nice little workspace, but you put a 12.5-foot kayak in here and it gets a little snug. So I probably will struggle a little bit because the way it's sitting here in the corner. I'm going to do the smart thing and just leave it where it is. You know, moving it out a little bit would be helpful so I can use the space that's around the machine, but I'm just going to leave it where it is. So I'm going to set up the camera. We're going to start cutting out the pattern, and we'll show a little bit of that. That's, you know, that's almost as interesting as watching paint dry. Once I get the pieces cut out and everything is ready to go into the kayak, we'll turn the cameras back on and we'll take a look at that. So this is what we have so far. I have the 3 pieces cut out. I will drill these access holes out. I will use a smaller drill bit and then just a coping saw, I think, just to cut these slots out, front and back. Drill these access holes out. I might not do this center one. So that's what I'll be busy doing next, just refining everything. We'll keep the camera off during that process. It might take me a long time. It might be real quick, but it might take me quite some time. So I want to just be as careful as possible because I'm doing everything just by eyeball. So, and then once that's done, we'll get back in this hatch and we'll install everything. And I really think it'll work great. The MDF pattern fits snug. We've seen through the process how it's evolved from the cardboard template to the MDF board, then adding a few pieces to the MDF, just gluing some more sheets to it and just refining the edges and adding a little bit more support, just because the MDF is a little bit more flexible compared to the same thickness of this high density polyethylene plastic. I did save a couple of those scrap pieces. I only got a 2 foot by 2 foot square. Really doing this as inexpensively as possible. It was about $15 plus shipping for that sheet. The same size starboard was in the $75 range, and it would have been 1/4 of an inch thick. So I was a little concerned about weight. I was a little bit concerned about the additional thickness, just not matching a thinner pattern. So that would take a little bit more adjusting. But I did save a few of those scrap pieces. If we need to, we'll reinforce some sections. I don't think we're going to have to. The only thing that I thought about, which is probably something we could live with, but this back wall, when it's up, there is a 1/4 inch or so of space between the outside wall of the battery box and that back wall. So what I'm thinking about is just adding a couple strips of plastic on the back side just to take up that slack. So in the event your gear does slide back and forth a little bit, if it hits that back wall, it's not gonna, it wouldn't come apart. It would stay firm and secure, but if it did shift one way or the other, I think just putting a little bit of a shim there would keep it from tilting backwards. There's no way it can tilt forwards because it will be along the inside lip of that hatch. So little things like that, just tweaking it just a bit. I talked just a few minutes ago about not putting a whole lot of crap in the front of the in the front hatch, because we do have our crate in the back. I have been playing with the idea of reducing the weight of this crate. This is pretty heavy, and because of its size, it's beautiful. I love this crate. You have the top section and the bottom section. The problem with that, just like I mentioned with the tackle box, when we have a lot of space, we like to fill it. And are all those things important? Do I need to keep them in that back bucket? I do foresee wanting to use the milk crate for a battery when I do get electronics. I'll have a smaller battery up front, maybe for the fish finder, but in a perfect world, everything would be connected to a single battery, the cameras and charging ports and whatnot. But because of the layout and the design of the Slayer Max, running wires up this side, because of the steering linkage in the cables that are inside the form of this boat, I don't want to drill into something that I shouldn't. I don't want to hook onto something that I shouldn't. I don't want to kink or disrupt anything that's going to affect the steering. So that really limits running wires on this thing. Now there are ways around that. You can use a nice strong magnet and tie your wires to a steel nut and just kind of drag it up each side. You can do the fishing, the old fishing pole or clothes hanger trick and kind of hook things in. And I did it when installing the Yak Attack anchor trolley to get this back pulley screwed in place with the proper backing. But it takes a lot of finagling. So the easier alternative, and let's be honest, it's a more inexpensive, it's a more affordable alternative. A lithium-ion battery that could power the whole boat is going to run me $600. I can buy a more affordable lithium-ion battery to run the fish finder that's much smaller, that will fit in the front battery box compartment, and then have a second one in the back, maybe in the crate or nestled behind my seat. Find a home for something like that and just power the things that are fore and aft with separate batteries. So those are some of the things I'm goofing around with. And just coming to mind, and I failed to mention it, the other reason to have that second battery in the back is I've been looking into and researching trolling motors for the kayak. I'm not going to be doing it this season, but I want to get the fish finder set up and in place, and then right away, we're going to upgrade to a trolling motor. And with that, you can go a couple different ways. I could get a under $250 trolling motor and just modify it and put the steering box up front and run the cords and cut wires, and it'll work great. Adding the battery and the stern mount and all the things that are needed for that, it's going to run me $1,500. Or I can save up an extra $500 and just get a Torpedo with the battery. So I'm kind of weighing my options. Yes, it's fun to do some of this stuff, but I would rather be on the water enjoying the kayak. Sometimes I'd like to be able to enjoy the kayak a little bit more than the enjoyment that I get from modifying and playing with it. It's all part of the hobby. So that's what we have for the pattern. I will cut these out off camera, scuff up this floor piece with the sandpaper just to smooth it out a little bit. I can already see this side has a little bit more curve than this side does. I'm going to line up the patterns again. I'm going to lay this in the boat itself, and we're going to do what we need to do to get this as identical on both sides as possible. And mostly what I'm using is just an old drum sander from my golf club building days. So the sanding sleeves that I have for this, I've had for quite some time, so they're kind of used and worn down, but that's going to be to our advantage because they're not going to be so rough in taking off material. So it'll be a little bit smoother process. It'll be a little bit slower, but I'll be able to keep an eye on the details and make sure that we're not grinding anything away. So I'm going to turn the cameras off for now. We'll get to it later. Tight lines. Hey, we're back in the garage. Just wanted to show a little bit of the progress that we've made since last time I had the camera on. So we got all our pieces cut out. I did my best at keeping these accurate. Did have to trim one of these short a little bit. Somehow I did measure just a little crooked, but two of them are nice and snug, and one of them it fits well, but there's a little bit of a gap here. I did cut out the holes that will be used for running wires or access, and they are useful when putting everything together, just having something to grab onto. I am considering putting a hole about here on this one, though these can be taken in and out. They're not as convenient as the bucket in terms of tearing it in and out. So I was thinking about a hole in this area, just so you can have visual access to below this. You want to be able to see the bottom of the boat in case there's water or what have you. And then if there was the need to get water or bait or whatever gets stuck down in there, then go through the process of taking out the front and the back piece and then lifting the floor up to clean or dry out the inside of that hatch. But I thought it would probably be smart to have at least a visual, something that you can at least visually see. Get a turkey baster down there if there's a little bit of water. But I've been fortunate. I've never had any issue with the seal on this front hatch. I've never had any issue with water coming in the back of the boat. I do have a complaint with the scuppers, but I actually replaced the two scuppers in the front, which I think were the ones that just weren't sealing well. Different topic. So as you can see here, I'm just mocking this up. I'm probably gonna have a second piece like this glued to the underside. My concern is that if I drill a hole straight through this, then this will be the weak section. So if you get any amount of weight on there, it could just be a mess. So I am testing some PVC glue. It's not the perfect glue for HDPE plastic, but I'm trying it. So I got some medium and I got some heavy duty, and this is just old. I haven't paid anything extra for any of this stuff. This was just old glue that I had already purchased for old projects, actual plumbing projects. But I've glued up a sample for each just to see how well they'll do. I've also had some leftover paint, the same paint that I painted my crate with, and this crate's been used 2 seasons now, and there is some areas where the paint's rubbed off slightly. So again, just on a scrap piece, just tested out that paint just to make sure that it'll be good. And I can scratch it if I really dig my fingernail into it, but just taking a piece and just dragging it across was making these light scratches. So I think that would be something that is doable, would be okay to just coat it so you don't get this glaring white from inside the hatch. I have scuffed the face of each of these up with the coarse sandpaper. This is, what is this, 100 grit. So I just took 100 grit and I scuffed those up real well. If I need to, if the glue works and I end up placing this hole here with this piece on the underside, so this will be underneath, just to give it a little bit of support. I have a couple more pieces. I could, I'll consider adding a support here and here maybe, or a support right across here. So we're back in the garage. I know that we're breaking this up into a whole bunch of little tiny clips, but I'm working on this over the course of a few days. Not always in the best situation to film. Right now we got the garbage coming through. Those poor guys have to work on 4th of July. I'd let my garbage sit for an extra day just so those guys don't have to pick up the trash. So what we got here going on. Last clip we talked about, I talked about an access point. Even though these walls can be taken out fairly easily to give you access underneath this bucket, just in case there was water in the boat. Maybe you had the hatch not quite latched and a wave came up and over, or God forbid you have a leak or something like that. But if you needed to get in the very bottom, if you had to get into this section, even if it was something simple just to squeegee out or turkey baste out a little extra water, that type of thing. So I did want to include an access hole for the easy stuff, even if I wanted to just peek down there. Then my thought was to also add a support, only because drilling the hole in that section that's thin, where it comes down to a point. I didn't want this to be a weak spot, so if I threw my anchor in the front hatch, I didn't want the weight of it just to snap the floor, God forbid, just because there's that weak spot. So I wanted to support this on the bottom with a piece. We tried yesterday the different types of PVC glue. Of course, that didn't work. I should have known better. There are glues for HDPE. I was just trying to use material that I had on hand. This is actually a pretty cheap project so far. And like I'm sure I mentioned before, using the starboard would have increased it might have been a better choice, but it would have increased the overall cost. So right now I'm in this, what, $15 for the plastic, the MDF I had on hand, the cardboard of course we had on hand. So getting back to this, I did want to include this support and this is the bottom. We're looking at the bottom of this. The PVC glue wouldn't work. That would be ideal if I had the glue that welded this together as one piece. I would also go in and add other supports because I think that would be fantastic, both on the front and back pieces as well as this bottom piece. My other thought was just to drill a few holes. We can add a couple short bolts and some nice sized washers just to support that nicely and tighten it down. That would probably work just fine. And then we sat down at this bench, and what I have here is a couple examples. This section here is welded the same HDPE, just a scrap sliver of it that I welded here. Then I have these tiny zip ties, which is the black plastic. I was trying just a few different materials. And then this last part is the regular clear plastic zip tie, which worked great. If I was welding larger flat pieces together, I would think that drilling a hole through it and then spot welding those sections as well would help spread out the support and the welding, you know, making it better overall. So that's what I did here. As you can see, I drilled through, made a hole. I welded the edges together, making that hole a little bit bigger, then put the plastic in the middle, did weld it, and then took some more plastic, more of the HDPE, and even kind of filled in the gaps that were at the top. So this does stick up slightly. My next step would be to, I'm going to sand this just to see, you know, how deep those welds go. This is kind of a learning process. I'm kind of teaching myself this, trial and error. I would never just go at it if it was a kayak. I would practice for quite some time for something that's as important as a kayak. But I think putting this together would work great. There's another step I could do, and that might be getting a little bit too in depth. If I was butting two pieces together, and there's kits, I'm sure I can get something real cheap at Harbor Freight, and there's little zigzaggy staple looking pieces that heat up, and you press it into the plastic, and it goes across the gap, and then you weld the crack after that. I could also get some metal screen, but again, that's when you're connecting pieces, you're butting them up together. And this, it's one piece on top of another, so I'm welding them together that way. I think I will do that. This quick little test with my 25-year-old soldering iron worked really well. And the one interesting thing is this is the back side, but it doesn't change the front side. So it didn't melt it, deform it, warp it, discolor it. So I think it will work really well on this piece. I'll attach this support piece to the bottom, so then when I turn it over, it'll look just fine. The other idea, and I've seen guys do this, Greg Blanchard, if you watch any of his videos, he usually is fishing out of a native Titan. What he has is a net with a flexible rim on it that snaps right into place on the hatch that is on the Titan. It is shaped a little bit different, the Titan hatch. It's more of an oval. Oh, that's embarrassing. He stalled his motorcycle getting out of the driveway. I'm going to leave that on the video. The problem with the net, though, is that your gear still does touch the very bottom of the boat. So if you did get water in there, it sloshes around. And that's been my complaint when the scuppers leak in the boat. So a lot of times I have a small little cooler, lunch pail kind of thing that I'll stuff between the back of my seat and the native sidekick wheels. And the last time that that I was out, it was a little choppy, lots of waves, and I didn't replace the scuppers yet, so I did have a little bit of leakage. So I had an inch of water in the bottom of the boat, and so my lunch pail got wet, and that annoys the crap out of me. So, all right, so we're back in the garage, hoping to finish this up today. The test I did with the PVC glue, I should have known better. There was no way that was going to work, and it didn't. So what we did do is I have this right now. I just have it clamped up, but what I did do is practice welding, and I used a couple different materials here. The black is a small thin zip tie. The sturdy part is the thicker zip tie, and this spot on the top here is just strips of the HDPE, which is probably what I'll actually use. Melting it together was very simple. The main thing is I just wanted to reinforce this hole because it does get thin here, and I wanted this hole as something to be able to view the bottom of the boat, just to be able to check real quick if you ever get water in there, and you know, be able to turkey baste it out. So, but that's what we're looking at so far. I messed around with using the same paint that I used on the milk crate for the front and back pieces. I did scuff them up with some 100 grit sandpaper, just to give the paint something a little bit more to stick to, and also when these go into the slot, to provide just a little bit of friction, just because the HDPE is so slick. So aside from my time, I'm just in this $15 plus shipping for the HDPE. Paint I had left over from another project, sandpaper and tools I had left over from another project. The patterns and the MDF I used for the patterns, again, left over from another project. And I think this is going to be something we can actually work with. And I was talking to somebody about this earlier today. Similar to the milk crate, I really like my milk crate. It's got the regular size. It's got the regular size crate at the bottom. It's got half a crate for the lid for the top. It's got a lid. They're both hinged, the lid and the extended top. I got 4 rod holders on each side. I added the strap, the attachments to add the strap to strap it to the kayak. And now that I've used it for almost 2 full seasons, it's a great milk crate. I'm kind of thinking I might want to go lighter. I don't think I need a fancier milk crate necessarily. I've mentioned this before, you know, why do fishermen have tackle boxes? Well, we like to carry all our junk, but there's got to be a limit. There's got to be some boundaries set on that, because I don't need to bring every fishing lure when I'm targeting a certain species of fish, or I'm at a specific lake that I know I'm only going to be catching one type of fish. You know, I'm not going to bring my ultralight stuff if I want to go out bass fishing. I'm not going to bring my bass gear if I'm in an area in a lake that is loaded with walleye, and I'd rather catch the fish with the teeth anyways. So that's kind of my thought process. So love this milk crate, think it's fantastic. I'm in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about stuffing it down a little bit, just to lighten load. But it's held up great, and but the same thing with this hatch idea. Using the HDPE was a really cheap alternative to the starboard. I think it'll work very well in the hatch. Will it be 100% perfect? No. The better material probably would be starboard, but if it works, I'm just going to leave it. I don't think I'm going to change it around. You know, that would be something if I upgrade my kayak and I want to do it to the new kayak. Then I know how well it works, so might as well get the fancier new material. But with that being said, let's get welding on this. So I'm not using anything special. I have this old solder iron. I've owned this since I was in college, and it was old when I got it. It works just fine. I've used it. It's nice to have in the toolbox. I've used it a half a dozen times over the last decade. It's nice to have when I need it, but I hardly ever need it. But for this application, it'll work fine. I just need to go down this seam, around the inside seam in each hole, and then we'll take the pieces of HDPE, and then we'll also weld in here too. You know, and I use that term loosely. We're going to weld. We're just going to melt some plastic together without warping our plastic. So it worked great on my test piece. I even drilled a hole and at least filled it in on this one side. I think it'll work great. You know, it'd be different if it was something that was on the outside of the kayak that people would see. For our purposes, I think it's going to work fantastic. Then we'll give the base there a spritz of spray paint, and I'll pop it all together. The weather looks like it's going to be fantastic this weekend. Might not go out Saturday, might do a little bit of editing, maybe start looking at all the pieces of this video that I have to put together. But hopefully get on the water on Sunday. So we'll set up the camera, we'll do some welding, and we'll see. I'm gonna post this whether the project works out or not. You know, I'm just bringing you along for the ride, and even if it doesn't work out for me, you know, I hope people kind of take what we've done in this video and improve upon it if they want. Do it the same way we did it and enjoy, or learn from my mistakes. So we'll see what happens. See how we're doing. Is it hot? Oh yeah. Yes it is. You're supposed to lick it, right? To see if it's hot. Now this circle they don't quite match. There's a little bit extra right here. I'm just gonna leave it as I go around and just melt the two layers together. Like I said, this hole is just so you have a little peephole to the bottom of the boat, you know, so you can keep an eye, make sure if you get water in the boat. Gives you a little bit of access that if it's just a tiny bit, you'd have a turkey baster, you can just clean it and get it out of there. If you really had to, this is not a permanent thing, and it can be removed just like the tub. They do make irons specifically for this that also have different shaped tips. A tip that was about the same size but flat would be perfect for this and would make it much easier. But I'm going to make do with this. This is going to work out just fine. For this inside diameter, I don't plan on using any of the welding rod, quote unquote. I plan on using that mostly on the top edge, where the edge of the, and I call it the top edge, but that will actually end up being the bottom, the underside of this tub. Just a little bit and pop it off, because going around the outside edge here is not the strongest, because you still have the insides that are not attached. So that's why I added the holes at each corner, and I will place a rod through the hole and weld it. My other idea was just to use nut and bolt and just bolt it together. I thought that would be an okay alternative. But before I went ahead with that, I just thought about, maybe I can just weld it. And this seems to work absolutely fine. back in the garage for the final install. I got 2/3 of the pieces in place, and I'm having trouble with the bow mounted wall. It appears that it's too big. Messing around with it, and I think 90% sure that it is too big, so we're going to do something drastic. I only got a 2 foot by 2 foot square of the HDPE, so as you saw back in the beginning when I would lay out the pattern, I used the whole piece, so I have no more scrap to mess around with this, but this is what we got. So it didn't seem that this slot was lining up correctly. So I was angling the front wall towards the stern. The way I measured everything is the front wall should go right in front of these 2 studs, but the size of the one that I have, I think I was measuring in front of these 2 studs. There's a thinner space between here and the plastic lip that seals the hatch, and that's where I wanted the front wall to rest. Right behind this, right behind here. So I went back to my original pattern. This is the original piece that we did. It has a number 2 on it because I had because this was the original size, and then I had added this piece. It was glued on like so, just to extend it, and that's what was giving me the size for this pattern. And at this point, it was just the top and bottom measurements, and as you can see, I increased the width, but I think that might have also been because I was measuring it too far forward in the stern. So now that we take this extension off, you can see I'm a good inch and a half off. Do I cut this end and recut this notch, or do I just slide this down? Because I know this notch fits very well. Bring this down and just cut it straight across. Messes up my circles. It'll cut across there. That will still be enough room if I want to run wires or anything like that. It also gives you a place to put your hands. So I'm going to line this up. And cut that right off. I'm not going to spend any more money on this, even if it worked perfectly and I wanted to upgrade the material like I mentioned before, the starboard. I wasn't going to do that. Just like the milk crate, it works really well. It serves its purpose. It's functional. Yes, I would like the milk crate, 20 pounds lighter, but I can live with it. It's working for now, so I'm not going to change it. I don't want to mess around with things that are serving their purpose. So it's the same thing with this front hatch. I'm hoping that this fix works because, like I said, I'm not gonna spend any more money on this. Maybe just to see if it works for the rest of the season, I could cut out a proper MDF stern wall and just stick it in there and see how we go. I just want to increase that usable space up front. The other idea is the next thing to try if this didn't work is that net with the loop that goes around the inside of that door. So, you know, I am gonna finish a video and let people see the good and the bad on this project. I think it's a good idea, you know, so I hope it works. So, more to follow. So we're all finished with extending the usable space that's in the front hatch of the Native Slayer Max 12.5. Came out all right. Had a little trouble at the very end here where the bow wall that I had cut out was a little bit too big, and to make it fit, I just trimmed off the top. If it's half decent now, could be another. It could be a half inch taller. Is what what I'm getting at. That did change the curvature of the cut and how it follows the front of the boat. But I will, you know, I can live with that. So this is what we have here. There's the front, and this is the gap that I'm talking about. I wanted these gaps a little bit better, but that's okay. There's slight movement. Like I said, it's not touching the very top of the boat. It is sandwiched in between the lip that's holding the lid here and these two screws. If you've seen the underside of the Native, there's kind of like two little nipples that these screws screw into. So there's two fingers that come down here that are plastic and part of the hull, and then there's the square edge of the lip right here. So it's sandwiched in between there. As I reach up in here, like I said, I probably could have made it about a half an inch taller. The back wall is very snug and fits in nicely, and it is right against the tub in this edge here, and is nice and snug. This also doesn't go to the very top. It's not touching the very top edge, but it's, you know, I did a little bit better job getting the curvature and trying to get that to follow the contours of the boat. The floor seems snug and sturdy. A little bit of a gap here and here. You know, like I said, I was eyeballing all this. If I had the equipment to measure that, I don't know, laser beams or something, I think that would be really cool. But the next thing to do is to test this. So the rest of the summer I'm going to be throwing my gear in here without the tub, and we'll see how it does. And it's not going to be, forgive me with all the camera jiggling, where did I put my tub? It's not going to be a lot of heavy junk. You know, what do I have in the tub right now? I throw my shoes in there when I'm not wearing them, you know, my water shoes. I'll throw them in there when they're dry, just to have them for the next trip. I got a dry bag. I usually throw a t-shirt in here, maybe sometimes an extra hat, couple towels. You know, I'll just throw odds and ends in here, kind of what I would normally throw in a backpack. Maybe a jacket. If it looks like rain, I'll throw the rain jacket in here. I have this dry bag, which is an extra propeller, an extra handle, along with, now that I switched, you know, now that I switched to the Next Level Design handle. With this handle, it's also the extra screws and washer that would connect the stock handle to the stock pulley. What else I have in here? I got a tow rope and I got a couple dock bungees. That's all I have thrown in here. Now that I have the little bit more space in that front hatch, the idea is lighten up this bucket just slightly, and then my anchor, which I haven't used much. I used to use the anchor an awful lot on my my old wreck kayak. I'd use the anchor a lot where we were fishing, but I'm taking the Slayer to bigger water, and I just don't find that I'm using the anchor as much, and I'm moving around a lot more. So, you know, I don't know. A nicer kayak. I got some pedal drive, and I'm going longer distances, I guess, is what that is. So, you know, the only other thing I could think, maybe taking the anchor from the bucket, maybe reducing the size of my gear bucket, throwing the anchor up front. Other than that, you know, I might throw these things up into the hatch as well. This dry bag is first aid kit and some odds and ends, toilet paper, you know, hand wipes, hand sanitizer, crap like that. Got a spongy sponge, and in this dry box right now, it's just tools, you know, extra pen, WD-40, there's some Allen wrenches, a couple rolls of Velcro, things that I might need in the event of, you know, setting up cameras, the boom poles, running wires. You know, I had the zip ties and the Velcro and things like that for that, and the Allen wrenches and whatnot in case, you know, the pedals come loose, or, you know, I have to do a little bit of, you know, on the water fixing. There's a screwdriver in there if I need to adjust the rudder or things like that. So that's pretty much everything. And like I said, here's our hatch. Not too bad. I don't know if I mentioned, I did drill 2 small holes up in the front there. I ended up taking a wire just so I can pull up on the board while I was trying to get that tab in. I made those tabs as snug as possible just so they would lock in place. So I'll use the kayak for the rest of the season and give a critique on how everything worked. I'm not 100% sure how I feel about it. I'm a little disappointed on the very last part of it and having to recut that stern wall. So I'm not pleased with myself for that, but overall I think it came out okay, and we'll see how it works. A little excited. I'm looking forward to throwing my crap in the front of my boat. So I'm definitely going out tomorrow, Sunday, and you know, we'll fish probably a dozen more times this season. So looking forward to how it holds up. Like I mentioned in the beginning, with this video, I am going to show the good and the bad. So I'm going to show the mistakes. I'm going to show, you know, and it's going to be a weird video because we've turned the camera off and on at least a dozen times. So this was over the course of a couple weeks now. So I'm just looking forward to finishing up. I hope you enjoy it. As always, if you have any questions, put those in the comment section down below. Like and subscribe so you don't miss any new content. And until next time, tight lines.